Okay, so I think we'll get started. There should be a few more people joining as we go. As I just mentioned, my name is Jenny Schultz, and I'll be showing you today um, how to use Citavi Web. And we'll also talk about a few other changes that have happened recently, because all of that is kind of connected with trying out Citavi Web and using attachments and things like that. First, I just want to go into the GoToWebinar settings a little bit. So today you're all muted, so you can't ask questions using your microphones, but you can ask them in the questions panel. And at the end, we'll have a little time for questions, and I'll try to get to any that I might have missed during the presentation. So definitely ask your questions there in the questions section. And this webinar will be recorded today, so you can refer to it afterwards if you want. And I've also included the PowerPoint slides in the handouts section. And it says handouts 1 of 5, but there's only one handout. So yeah, so you have access to those, and the recording will be sent out maybe a few days after today's session. Okay, and with that, let's get started. So first, I just want to give you an update on some other changes besides Citavi Web. So we have a new free policy. Those of you who have used Citavi in the past probably at some point tried out Citavi Free, and that let you use Citavi for up to 100 references, and it was non-expiring. And we've now changed that over to a 30-day trial instead. And the reasoning behind that has to do with the cloud storage and the costs of the cloud storage. Even with Citavi 6 for Windows, we were noticing a lot of people using the cloud project option, and if you have an indefinite amount of time to use the trial, those costs add up a little bit. So unfortunately, we've made that change, but you still get to try out all of the features in Citavi for up to 30 days. And then you can decide within 90 days after that whether or not you want to continue with Citavi. And at any time, you can also export your references if you decide that Citavi isn't for you. And we also have a new customer portal. So that is under that link there. It's just a little nicer designed experience for purchasing licenses or trying out Citavi with a trial. And it has some links to different getting started resources as well. And we also have new student pricing. And the student pricing gives you a bundle with Citavi Web and Citavi for Windows, and it's quite a big discount compared to the other options. So the next one from there would be the academic pricing. We've also changed our website around a little bit, and we've introduced Citavi Space. And Citavi Space is just the option to purchase additional cloud storage space. So you have the option of 5 gigabytes or 50 gigabytes, and that's for a 12-month period. So pretty similar to other cloud services like Google Drive and things like that. And if you have any questions, oh, and I see that somebody doesn't hear me. Can anyone else hear me before I continue? Okay, I'll just quickly respond there. Okay, great. Glad to hear that everyone else can hear me. If there is ever a technical issue, do write in the question area or the chat area, and then we'll try and fix it if we can. So those are all of the other changes, but I think what most people want to see is Citavi Web. So that's what we'll get into now. Just a few quick notes on what we were trying to do with Citavi Web, and that was, well, the main goal was to adapt Citavi for Windows to the online environment. So if you've worked with Citavi 6 for Windows, you know there are a lot of different buttons. There's a toolbar, there's a status bar, there's a million options in the interface, and that works quite well for a normal installed software program. But when you're in the online environment, you might be working on a tablet, you might be working on a laptop screen, and you want a little bit more flexibility in terms of what the interface looks like. So that was our goal, was to take the features from Citavi for Windows and kind of streamline all of those and make it a more user-friendly environment to work in, and a little bit more modern as well. So we tried to base Citavi Web a bit on the Microsoft Metro design language. So you'll see that it looks kind of blocky and hopefully modern and clean, and like something you want to use on a day-to-day basis. And another goal was to address the issue that Citavi is often seen as too complex. So we really pared down the features to the core features that most people use. And that means that some things like the math formula editor, that's not in Citavi Web. The citation style editor isn't in Citavi Web. So a few of those kind of power user features, as we call them, aren't in Citavi Web, but we hope that then the features that most people use and like are a little bit easier to find, easier to use. And so that also gets into that next point there. And of course, one of the main goals was to give Mac and Linux users a way to work with Citavi that they hadn't had in the past, or that they had to go through some hoops to get, like using Parallels and installing Windows on a Mac. So those were the goals. And now we can take a look, and you can kind of see just in this comparison here the differences in how things are laid out. And this is still a screenshot from the beta version there, but you can see that it's just a little bit less information up here in the toolbars, a little less text, and also then in this bottom bar here. And everything scales up and down nicely. So it should be a good experience, and we hope that you will like it as well. And one thing to just reiterate is that we do have all of the features that you already would know and like from Citavi 6 for Windows. So you can still do all of the steps of the research process in Citavi Web. You can search for sources, add them into your project. You can analyze text and exert quotations and save your own comments. You can bring all of that into an outline. And then when you go to write, you have all of your notes and your sources at hand. So it's easy to write, and you're less likely to suffer from writer's block or not knowing where to start. Okay. So without further ado, let's get into Citavi Web. Just going to open up the main page here. And this is my my main Citavi work account here. So you see I have a lot of test projects. These are a lot of projects that I created already in Citavi 6 for Windows. So if you created cloud projects before, then you can open them in Citavi Web. I should probably go through and, and clean up my projects list at some point. But right now we're going to start a new project. We'll jump back to this main menu in a second. but I'm going to just name this demo. I can change the color if I want, can give it a description, and if I were importing from another reference management program, I could click this link and import that information. So if you're switching from EndNote or Mendeley, this is where you would do that. And I'm just going to create that project now. And then we can open that up. And I have to apologize because my connection today is a little bit slow, so that's why we're going to first go to the new project and do an import, and then while the import is running, we'll take a look at that main Citavi page. All right, so when you open your new project, you can import references right away. This is a bit of a difference to Citavi 6 for Windows that you have when you start an empty project. You have this window pop up so you know right away where you need to go to import things. And so we're going to do that. We're going to import a PDF file, actually a few PDF files. So I'll just select the ones I want. I want all 3 of these. And now it's going to start looking up that information for those PDF files. So it'll look up the information you need to cite your references later on. And when I tested this out earlier, it was a bit slow. Again, my internet connection is a little slow today. So while that's working, we're going to go over to the homepage again, and I'll walk you through some of the layout here. So similar to Citavi 6 for Windows, you have a news column here, and this can be set up to be an RSS feed reader. So if you have a search alert, let's say that you do a search in a database periodically just to see what's new on a particular topic, then you can add that that feed to this news column, and then you would get updates there. So to add that, you just go to this add-ins and settings area, and then RSS feeds, and then you can enter that feed URL there. Also on this add-ins and settings tab, you have the information about the Word Assistant and the Citavi Picker. And there are some citation options as well. Citation keys are used for citation styles, especially footnote styles, where you might need to have a shortened form of the citation when you cite the source more than once. So if you're working with one of those more complex styles, Chicago style is an example, then you can activate that and use that. And then we also have Latex support if you're working with a LaTeX editor. Okay, and just want to point out as well that we still have all the language options we had in Citavi 6 for Windows, and you have a few different options under this options link as well. So you can, for example, check how much storage space you have here. If you purchase additional Citavi space, that'll show up in this area here. And so, for example, I see I have quite a bit of space, so I can add lots of attachments yet. And you have this question area here. This just has some information for common support questions. So things like licensing questions. And you have, very importantly, the link to ask our support team a question. So that's the basics of this main screen here. And one last thing that I almost forgot, you can also add team members to a project here in this project list. So if I wanted to add a colleague to this project, I can do so. And one thing that's great about Citavi Web is now that if you're working on a project with Mac users and Linux users, in addition to Windows users, everyone can use Citavi Web for the project. So you don't have that barrier anymore of the operating system being an issue. So let's say that I want to give my colleague Yana the reader role, and that would just mean that she can't make any changes to the project. She can only view the information I have in there. And if I made her an author, she could make changes, add references, and do all the things I can do. And as the project leader, I'm the only one who can delete the project or add team members. So I'm just going to invite her. And once she's confirmed that she's going to join the project, then this will change and it'll show it as green here. Okay, so let's go back to our demo project here. I'll close up that Citavi Space area. And yeah, it's still being a little bit slow. In the meantime, we can look a little bit at some of these other options. It's a little bit grayed out at the moment, but that's okay. So at the beginning, you saw this import option here. In addition to PDFs, you can import from a database. So there you would use a text file, for example. Or if you forgot to import when setting up your project, you also have the option here to import from another reference management program. If you have a book sitting on your desk, you can use the ISBN lookup to add that to your project. And so that's all pretty similar to Citavi 6. Okay, and now after much longer than it should be on your computers with hopefully a little bit better internet connection. So now my files that I imported are here, and we can take a look at the information that we have. So one thing you might notice already is if you were using Citavi 6 for Windows, you would see all of the fields, all of the possible fields that you could use, except there were a few additional ones under the More menu. And now we've streamlined that down a little bit just so that it doesn't take up so much space and you have to scroll through a lot of fields if you're working on a small screen. So now everything that you have information entered for is shown, and then the empty fields are not. And to show those empty fields, you just go down here to these two arrows and click that option. And then you can enter anything else that you might need. For example, if you're using the custom fields, then you could fill that out. So this is something that's also good, I think, to show new users, especially maybe undergraduate students, and just point out that after they do an import, they should double check everything and just make sure that it matches the text, the full text that they imported. Just because sometimes when you're automatically importing, there can be mistakes in metadata from databases or in the DOI database. And it's always good to just double check. If you want to give yourself a task so you remember to do that, you can go into the Tasks tab here and then go down to the bottom and click the plus symbol. This is one design principle I want to point out, is that a lot of times things that you would do in Citavi 6 that were in the upper menu bar are now here down at the bottom. And should be a little bit easier to use, for example, with the touch device. Although Citavi Web is still a bit more designed for use on a laptop computer, something with enough screen space, although it does work, of course, on tablets as well. So we're going to add a task, and I'm going to add this verify bibliographic information task to my reference, and I might do that for all three. At the moment, you can't batch add tasks to, for example, these three references at once. So there are a few small differences still with Citavi Web and Citavi for Windows. I'll try and point those out as we go. And things like that are things that are planned for a future update, but it's just in this first launch version, there are a couple little things like that that are still not there. Okay. So otherwise, this area is pretty similar to what you know from Citavi 6. One thing that's changed is that The Content tab now has the categories and keywords and the table of contents, evaluation, and abstract fields. In Citavi 6, there were two tabs, Content and Context, and we've merged those here, which I think is a little bit clearer than it was. And you have your Quotations tab. That's empty right now because we haven't added any. And then Tasks here. You can change the layout a bit, so you have these options on the side of the screen that let you hide columns. So when you're looking at a PDF, for example, you might want it to be full screen like this. But I'll add those columns back. And you can use these double-headed arrows too to drag the columns around so that you have things laid out how you want. Okay. We'll get into this these filter options here a little bit later, but I think next I want to show you the text section because this is a bit different from Citavi 6. So in Citavi 6, there were three workspaces: references, knowledge, and tasks. And in Citavi Web, there's an additional one, text. And text is where you're going to work with your full text articles and make any comments on them, save ideas, and save notes, save quotations. Anything that you read that you think is interesting and that you want to keep for use in your paper, then you would do that here. And so that would look something like this. You open up the PDF in the middle, and again, you can make this as big as you want. And then you would just highlight what you think is useful. And so, for example, let's say I'm reading this section here. Oops. And then I think this is important. I can save that as a direct quotation, indirect quotation, summary, comment, or I can add keywords and abstract and table of contents. So the more common ones are here, and then these less common options are in that more menu. So I'm going to close that and add a direct quotation. And just like with Citavi 6 for Windows, you would reformulate the main idea in this core statement field that just can help you jog your memory when you later are looking at a list of hundreds and hundreds of notes. So I might say food processing makes it difficult to detect food fraud. So that's the restatement of the main idea. And then here I might want to add my quotation marks. In Citavi 6 for Windows, you could highlight and then right-click and add different kind of predefined quotation mark types. And in Citavi Web, a lot of those right-click options no longer are possible. And I think the reason for that was because of Macs and maybe also the online web environment, that it's not as common as for Windows to have those right-click menus like that. So if you're used to using that, you may have to look around a little bit for some of the options. And usually you can find the different options down here at the bottom. Okay, so we've added that. Citavi was able to locate the page number for this article because it must have been in the metadata. And now I can add that to a category. One thing that trips me up every time, and you might have just seen it, is a lot of these different options here, they look like they're fields, but then you end up having to click on the heading here. So we'll do that. And we're going to add a category. And let's say my project is about food fraud around the world, and maybe we want to say something about testing. That'll be one of my categories. And we'll do maybe another category Oops. And for whatever reason, it's grayed out. Might be due to my, yeah, it looks like Citavi is loading. So I might have an internet issue at the moment. Let's just close that and try again. Okay, yeah, I think at the moment it's having a bit of a connectivity problem. Can you all still hear me okay? Okay, thank you, Margaret. Um, so let's go into the knowledge organizer and use that there. Yeah, and things are loading a bit slowly at the moment, so if nothing else, then we'll just close and reopen the project and then should be able to continue. Yeah, so that points out one issue that can happen with a web version is that if you lose some connectivity, then yeah, it's not like working with installed software where you can just continue on. Um, let's try just opening that up again and see if we have a little bit better connection. Yeah, and someone pointed out, okay, so it's also been your experience, Tim, that the speed is a little bit slow. Yeah, I think some of that is just that we released it, what is it now, a couple of weeks ago, and yeah, I think there are still a few things that can be optimized. It's a lot of that with software, with apps, when you're testing it out during a beta phase, there's such a small number of users that you don't find all of the issues. And then I think once it's out there and being used on a bigger scale, then some of those things pop up. So I would expect the experience to be better and better as the weeks go on, and as we fix some of those issues or optimize some of the speed issues. Okay, so we're back now. And feedback form is up. We'll just close that for now. So let's go to our knowledge area here and create our categories. Yeah, it looks like it had a little bit of a hang up there after we input our other two. So I'm just going to add a new category now. And let's say we want this to be or by geography, something like that. And then we're going to want also maybe a subcategory of, let's say we're looking at the differences between the US and China and Switzerland. And we can move these around. You have the arrows down here that let you, for example, make this a subcategory of that. So I'll press that arrow there. And yeah, now I have my categories set up, at least my initial ones. Of course, you can change this as you go, just like with Citavi for Windows. Let's jump back to our knowledge item we saved in the text area here. And that was this article, I believe. And there we go. And I'll just open that up. And then we can add one of our categories. And we'll add that to our China category there. Well, that's interesting. So yeah, and there are a couple little things here and there. So we'll see now if that saved it. It looks fine. I'll share that with our developers later. Especially in the category system, there are a couple little things I've noticed when I've been practicing for webinars or showing some of the people on our team how to use Citavi Web. So that also is one area that should be better and better in the next couple of weeks. Um, so we have our quotation saved now. Let's just add maybe one or two other things. Let's say maybe this paragraph. And I could add, for example, my own comment. And I might say something like, bureaucracy is a problem in food fraud detection. And you could continue on, and I won't keep typing here, but you could write out then your comment. And here I'll just add in that page. And this is a good indication of why you should always check the information once you have a text in your project. So here in this particular article, the page number is actually 36 to 52, but it seems that it pulled in some different page numbers, and you could check that by going to that DOI address and just seeing if maybe it wasn't correct in the Crossref database. Yeah, so I have the page ranges correct now. Let's jump back to quotations, and then that should be set. So I have a couple knowledge items now, and if I go to the knowledge section, I can see what I have. So this one hasn't yet been categorized. And if I want to drag it, this works a little bit differently than in Citavi for Windows. You have these little dotted lines that appear, and you can hover over that and then pull it to the section that you want. So maybe I want this in just the general testing category there. They just updated something this morning, so I'm wondering if this is a new issue here, this little warning, but we'll just ignore that for now. And yeah, so we have now a couple of things. We have our China one here, and you could continue doing that as you read and as you go. Okay. So one thing that you can't do yet with the text area is you can't highlight something and add a task to it. But what you can do is add a task under the Tasks tab. And here's that one we added before. And you could say, for example, that let's review the discussion section. And then that might be something that I'd want to assign to Yana, who hasn't confirmed yet. So I would just, I guess, add that there. Once Yana had joined the project, then I could assign that to her. And I can add any notes there if I want as well. Okay. The tasks section is also kind of similar to Citavi 6 for Windows. You have the tasks and you can filter them by your tasks, so you can see anything that's been assigned to you. And I think I didn't actually assign those ones I created, so they won't show up. I can go back to all to see everything. And then the ones that were created by me. And that will be, of course, all of these as well. So this one, for example, that I assigned to my colleague, I can see here, it would say Jana once she's joined the project. You have, as before, the due dates that you can add, and if something's on the current day or before, you'll see that little flashing arrow that we just saw. And you have the slider as well. So you can mark something complete once it's finished. And you have a nice filter up at the top to display open tasks or to hide things that have been completed. So that's the task section. Let's jump back now before we go to the Word document and look at the Word Assistant. Let's jump back to references, and I want to show you how you can search in Citavi Web because that's also a little bit different than Citavi for Windows. So you have your column here that has different filters. This is a lot like that filter symbol in the desktop version. And we tried to keep this to the main ones here, but you can always click more and then you have some additional options. But we didn't want it to be too overwhelming or too long a list on the small screen, so that's why I have that more button. Here then I can filter, for example, by references with PDFs, or I could filter, for example, by category. Let's say that I want to look for a reference that was saved here. And since we're in the reference section and I haven't categorized any references yet, that's why we're not seeing anything. Let's go ahead and add a reference to a category, and we'll add maybe these two here just to that main testing category. Okay. And now, for example, if I had my long list of references and I wanted to look just for any reference I had that I had categorized as being under China by geography testing, then I can go to that and I'll find that one. Or if I'm looking for, if you have hundreds and hundreds of references, then it's a little harder to see than here with just these three. Let's say I'm looking for something on, I know that it was in the testing category, and then I want to add a condition. I want to look for maybe either the author or let's see, what could we try here? Maybe I know it was written last year. So you could use that filter and then you'll get to that article there. Or if you knew the author, for example, you could use a combination of filters to find that again. So one thing that we don't yet have in Citavi Web is the advanced search window that you have in Citavi 6 for Windows that lets you really search every single field and construct very detailed searches, use Boolean logic, and use asterisks and things like that to get at different spellings. So that's a little advanced for the web version. I think we will be expanding on the search features going forward, but at the moment you have the filter options, you have the full text search, so that would be up here. So let's say I want to look for my article that had information on yak jerky, so I type in yak, and then it's going to search across all the PDFs, and then it should pull up. I think if I jump to that article, it should pull up those instances. Yeah, and it's just a little bit slow at the moment, so now that's updating there. And then you can jump through the different sections uh, to the different instances. Okay. Um, the other option you have is down here at the bottom, and if you were looking, for example, for food policies let's say, in the title, then I could enter that as a phrase and put quotation marks around it, and then it should also pull that up. And for whatever reason, maybe we should get rid of that search option there. Some of the things, yeah, it looks like it's still thinking over here. So yeah, apologies for how slow things are at the moment. Should only get better and better. Okay, well, we will maybe cancel that search. Um, so one other thing that you have is this notification bell. This will let you know, for example, if something is still being imported, or if you've lost connectivity, you'll see a notification up here. And another thing you can always see is over here on the left, this little circle that will just show if something, if it's performing some tasks still. Someone asked if you can import Word documents into Citavi Web, and you can only really work with PDFs in Citavi Web. You can use, you can import, for example, a web page. So let's say we're importing, let's do a sub page that doesn't have a video running on it. Maybe we'll do our one support page here. So you can use the picker and import things from the web into Citavi, but Word documents won't work for using the annotation tools. Okay, so we're going to add that web page. And also web pages in HTML format, they won't work for use in the annotation in the text panel. But you can at least bring in a web page. And this would be an example. You notice here with those journal articles that we got a lot more information. With this web page, there's a lot less, and that's just typically what you see with web pages. So here's a case where you definitely want to go down and open up those additional fields and then put in some additional information, like maybe organization QSR International as the author, and if you could find the page information, the year information, then you can add that there. Yeah, Stacy, did that answer your question? And you can add attachments to a reference as well. So that's that little paperclip symbol down here. And let's see, one thing I just want to check. With web pages in Citavi 6, you could create a PDF and then use it in the preview pane with the text annotation tools, but that we don't have yet for Citavi Web. So there are a couple other questions. I'll just get to those before we move on to looking at the Citavi Assistant. Someone's asking, will both Citavi 6 for Windows and Citavi Web coexist for some time? Yeah, so we're not planning to get rid of Citavi 6 for Windows at all. Citavi Web is an addition, and it's because we really wanted to have an option. Well, there are a lot of reasons. We wanted to have an option for Mac users, for Linux users, and of course teams that have mixed operating systems, and people who just want to be able to use something more on the go and on a tablet, on whatever device they happen to have an internet connection on. So yeah, so they're two kind of different programs, and Citavi 6 for Windows, I would say, is still very good for companies, for example, that need some of those more robust features, or somebody working maybe on a book project that's going over years and years, and they need some of the more advanced features in Citavi 6, or more specialized features, I guess I should say. And Citavi Web is more for people who want all the basics. They want the Citavi workflow, but they don't need maybe some of these more esoteric features. That's probably the wrong word, but some of those very specialized features that maybe 1% of users ever need. Yeah, and somebody asked about the saving a web page as a PDF feature. That doesn't work with Citavi Web yet, so that you would need to do in Citavi 6 for Windows at the moment. Yeah, and somebody is asking if it's possible to switch between Citavi for Windows and Citavi Web. I would suggest, if you're trying to decide which version to buy, I would suggest using the trial, and you can get to that from the website, citavi.com, and then there are some free trial buttons all over the site. And that'll take you to the portal where you can choose or you can trial both at the same time. I would suggest just taking a look at both and seeing which one you like. And you can create a cloud project in Citavi for Windows or in Citavi Web and open it in the other version. So you can quite easily compare that way just by using one project in both tools. And somebody's asking about the free policy. Yeah, if you signed up for Citavi 6 for Windows in May, and you were working with Citavi Free, you can continue using Citavi Free. So anyone who was using Citavi Free before the switch, it still is the same. You can still use it for up to 100 references. And someone's asking about the trial version. The new way that the trial works is that it's limited to 30 days, but it's not limited to a number of references. So you can do an import of 30,000 references and try that, and yeah, play around with how it works with a really large project, and that you couldn't do before with the 100 reference limit. So the new limitation is just the amount of time, and you also have the 1 gigabyte of storage limit. Okay, let's jump back into the demo, and I'll show you the Word Assistant. And it looks like I closed my document at some point. So just let me start up Word quickly. All right. Okay. So this will be pretty familiar to anyone who's worked with Citavi 6. You would usually have your Citavi tab up here and click that to connect it up with your Word document. But with Citavi Web, there's the new Citavi Assistant. And the Citavi Assistant also works with Word for Mac. So if you're a Mac user working with Citavi Web, this is what you'll be using then to insert references. And to get that Citavi Assistant, it's pretty easy. You just go to Get Add-ins, so that's under the Insert menu, and then just look for Citavi, and then it should pop right up and you can install it. So you'll want to go with the Citavi Assistant and not the version that we had for the beta test. So just the normal Assistant here. So let's go back, and I'm going to click on that. And oh, do I still have the beta installed? Yeah. So if you had the beta installed before, you might run into the same issue if you never properly uninstall it, like I seem to have done. So let's just add the proper one here. It's funny, I just changed that over. So we'll do that one more time. So I'll add the assistant. And now that beta message will be gone. And we can connect this up to our project. It does require you to log in, so you'll just need to do that. Okay. And then you can select your project. In a second. Let's try that. Okay, something seemed to go quite right there. It might require a restart after I remove that other add-in. That can sometimes happen with Word, so let's try that. It always seems like all of the issues come up when you're doing a webinar. It's kind of how it goes. All right, and whoops. That wasn't what we wanted to do. Okay, and now it's disappeared completely. So let's add that again. I think a lot of this is because I never uninstalled that beta version assistant, so let's hope that that goes as it should now. Seem to be in a little bit of a loop there. Okay. All right, we'll give it one more chance. And if you're working with both the desktop version and the assistant, you can have both installed. So you can have the Citavi add-in installed and the Citavi Assistant. Okay, so it really doesn't like that. Let's see with the beta version. I wonder also, because I have the same login for both, maybe there was something with that. So let's try it that way. Okay, yeah. Now we've got these two here. Interesting. Um, I'll try the full one again and see. Okay. Okay, well, I'll show you with the beta version. I'm guessing something because I have the one installed and yeah, it's funny. In the other demo, that wasn't an issue. Yeah, something different every time, huh? So the features are the same as with the beta version, so we'll just go with that for now. So just like with Citavi for Windows, you can double click to insert a reference, and then Citavi will create the bibliography at the end. And of course, you also have your knowledge items that you've saved. I might be logged in to the beta version, actually. That's probably why. Okay, never mind. Anyway, that shouldn't happen to you when you're trying it out. All right, so we're just going to insert a quotation now as well. One thing that's a little bit that you might run into is how the knowledge items are inserted if you want to change that, because a lot of times the core statement will be inserted by default, and a lot of times you're going to want the knowledge item instead. So I'm going to change that quick. That's just in that settings menu there, and we'll choose that. And now if I insert that, it's going to insert the quotation and then the citation. And right now this is in the Citavi default style. I want to change that. Let's say we want to go with APA 6th edition. And we have a few different, sometimes it gets a little cut off, so you can just mouse over and then you can see the name of the style. So we'll choose that one. You can also search by language, subject area, citation system. Okay. So now I just have to click this button up here, Save Changes in Format, and it's going to update all of those references and then my reference list at the end. And it'll even get some of those very strange rules, like in APA 6, you have this these three dots here because it's a large number of authors, so that is indeed correct there. Yeah, and some of you who work with some of the more obscure features in the Word add-in, things like the different options that you can define in your citation style when you create your own citation style. Some of those options aren't available in the Citavi Assistant. So just something to be aware if you work with those features. And the other thing is you don't have the chapter view in the Citavi Assistant, but you do have your outline items always here at the side. So you always have that outline here. You just can't insert it all at once like you can with the Citavi. I always want to say Assistant now in the Citavi Word add-in in Citavi 6. If you ever need to make changes to a reference, for example here, if I decided I wanted to add the page number, I can do that. And then just hit the check mark here, and you have the different options with year only, person only, no parentheses. And you also have your different formatting option if you want a footnote, for example. So you have some of those more advanced options here as well, but we'll just do a page number for now. And then it updates that. So that's, oh, we're at time already. Uh, Sorry about that one technical issue that pushed us back a little bit. So that's a very quick run through of Citavi Web. I just had a couple slides yet that I wanted to show you. This you'll get when you download the handout, but this is just kind of a summary of some of those main differences that we looked at today. So things like the context sensitive quick help is mostly gone just because that takes up a lot of space, and it's there where we thought people would still need it. And the rest we went through in some detail in the session. And you notice throughout I was pointing out some areas where we're missing some features. This list here is good to refer to because it'll show you what some of those differences are. And for the full list, you can go to this link at the bottom. So most of these are planned. The citation style editor isn't, but most things will be at the same level as Citavi 6 for Windows, at least most of the main features. It's just going to be then in an update later on. So if you do have questions after the session and need to dash off now, you can send them to us at support@citavi.com. We're happy to help. If you're experiencing any issues, like if you have some of the bugs that I also had today, definitely let us know. A lot of times within the program, you might see the option to send us a bug report, and otherwise you can write to our support team. We're very happy if people let us know so we can fix those as soon as we can. And yeah, I would also just say in the first few weeks, maybe expect a few growing pains. In other versions that we've released, it's usually been a couple months before things run really, really perfectly. So it'll get there, but yeah, we're just a couple weeks out, so there's still a few little things here and there. And yeah, thanks for your patience in the meantime while those get kind of ironed out. Okay, yeah, so we are over time, but I'll stick around for a bit. Anyone who has to leave, definitely feel free to head out. But for anyone who does want to stick around and ask some questions, I'll take a look here at the question pane. I think there was one I missed earlier, so let me jump back to that. Yeah, Victor, you mentioned the text is not the same in the Citavi entry. I think that was for the quotations. I also noticed that something seemed a little funny there. I think that was when we had that slowdown where it was still thinking, where the yeah, the loading symbol was still going, and then I was continuing to work. So I think it's probably related to that. But yeah, that would be something, of course, if you notice it when you're working, let our support team know. And Lisa commented, text tab or pane looks really neat. Yeah, thank you, Lisa. Yeah, I like that section of Citavi Web a lot. That's quite handy to use that and to have that so accessible. Whereas in Citavi 6, you're always going over to the preview pane. It's not really front and center, and we've made it more prominent, more easy to get to in Citavi Web. Someone said update to APA 7. Yeah, so that is also available. I'm just more familiar still with APA 6, so that's why I tend to use that for the demonstration. But APA 7, we have a few different options there. I can go with that one there. And then we should see, I think that changed. Those 3 dots go away then when you choose APA 7, because that's one of those rules that changed with APA 7. Yeah, so you have all of those citation styles that you have in Citavi for Windows. somebody's asking, is your team going to focus now on the web version instead of the native application? Well, I would say definitely in the next few months, the focus will probably still be on the web version just because you saw it today. There are a couple little things here and there that should be a little smoother than they are. So I think that's going to be the priority for the next couple of months. And then yeah, I'm not really part of those development discussions, so I'm not sure going from there, if they'll start then working on Citavi 7 or what the plan is. But some of that is up to yeah, to the people who plan those kinds of things. I'm a little lower on the totem pole, unfortunately, so I can't tell you. um, so someone's asking, in the desktop version, there's an Excel list option for quick overview. Yeah, so that's also missing from the web version, and also the table view. So in Citavi for Windows, you have in the menu bar the table option, and that lets you create this nice table that can then be exported to Excel. That's missing in the web version. And someone's asking if we'll send the recorded video. Yeah, so that'll be sent out probably in the next couple of days. We do have to make some slight edits to the recording. So at the beginning, the first few minutes I'll take out because it's just me asking if you can hear me. So you'll get the recording once it's been prepared. Someone's asking also about the Scrivener integration. That's unfortunately something we can't do a whole lot about because at least to my knowledge, Scrivener still doesn't have an add-on interface. And Citavi Web, I believe, also doesn't have an add-on interface, so they wouldn't be able to talk to each other, to put it kind of in layman's terms. Citavi 6 for Windows has an add-on interface, but since Scrivener doesn't, we haven't been able to link them up. So definitely that's good feedback to give Scrivener, that you would like to work with reference management programs and Scrivener together. And yeah, that issue is a little bit more on their side. All right, there's still a few of you around. Does anyone else have any questions? Okay, going once, going twice. Oh, there's a question. So, what are the main advantages of Citavi versus other reference managers? That's always a good question. And one of the main things is, of course, that Citavi supports more of your workflow as an academic or student. You don't just have reference management, you also have the ability to take notes, save your comments, save quotations that you think are interesting, and bring that into an outline. And then you have that outline with all of that information when you go to write. So it makes the writing process a lot more efficient, hopefully a lot less painful and more fun. And it just keeps you nice and organized throughout the process. You can also create tasks for yourself so you don't forget anything. And the tasks are very helpful also in a group situation where you're reading different texts and kind of pulling the information out of them into a report or for a presentation or something like that. So Citavi is more kind of an all-around tool. And other reference management programs, they really just help you organize your sources and create properly formatted citations in a bibliography. Okay, so I think a few people have headed out. Any last questions? So if not, then I just want to say thanks to all of you for joining today, and Yeah, and thanks for the nice comments also in the questions area. Yeah, and just maybe at the end to say that we had a few little hang-ups today during the session, but those you can expect to really improve in the next, yeah, even in a week from now, I'm sure it's going to be a little bit better. So if you run into anything, do let our team know, and we're pretty fast about fixing any issues that might come up. So yeah, thanks again, everyone, and um, have a good rest of your day. Bye.